Welcome to Inside Badger Nation on Madison CW. Now your hosts, Ben Wargle and Phil Dawson.
Welcome into Inside Badger Nation. Phil Dawson for the Big 1070. Ben Wargle from BadgerNation.com with you for another week and another big show for you as we're closing in on National Signing Day. I already have some early enrollees, but today's program, we're going to give you an update on some visitors that were in town over the weekend. Plus, we do have a special guest, Brian Posick, the voice of Badger Hockey, here to update us on what's going on with Mike Eves' club. Plus, we'll have our email question of the week, all for you today, right here on Inside Badger Nation. So, Ben, we have to talk about, well, it's been a while since visitors could come. Had a kind of recruiting period that had slowed down, and now, after this weekend, a couple of visitors, and why don't we take a look at this big board here, and some of the visitors that did show up this past weekend.
Yeah, this was a big weekend for Wisconsin. These five guys, the last four, represent all areas of need for the University of Wisconsin. TJ Edwards has been committed for quite some time. Actually, kind of a fun story with him. Edwards committed before Thanksgiving, and it was tweeted out by his school's Twitter account. However, the school had so few followers that we didn't find out about. No one found out about it for a week. And this guy was committed to Western Michigan, and a very talented player that's going to fit in real well with the middle linebacker position. A lot of these guys, Edwards, Tyndall, and Rushing, are all guys who at one time were committed to another school. That's been kind of a trend we've been seeing with the University of Wisconsin this year, that they were going to recruit anybody at any time, no matter who they're committed to, if they feel that they fit what they need. Dakota Dixon, very, very smart, intelligent player. Probably is more of a safety prospect, which is what we have him listed as. Some schools like him as a cornerback. I think he could fit that safety role. He's got a couple more visits lined up. He had a great weekend. Derek Tyndall is currently committed to Indiana. He told me that he was going to decide between Wisconsin and Indiana, but now TCU is coming in the mix. Louisville is coming in the mix. A number of schools have come in the mix, so it'll be real interesting to see kind of which way he's leaning. He also really enjoyed his visit. And George Rushing, too, was a Louisville commit for a long period of time. And Rushing was a guy who did not really enjoy the coaching change, was not really vibing with Bobby Petrino, decommitted, and has taken a lot more visits. Now, Wisconsin has put a big emphasis on it because, as you can see, Phil, WR, wide receiver, they need wide receivers in this class. They already have a bunch of them already committed. Krenwick Sanders, Darian Watkins, Natrell Jamerson, Chris Jones. They want to keep adding depth there. Rushing's a guy that could fit that mold. Wisconsin went down there for an in-home visit with him this week. Same with Dixon, same with Tyndall. And Rushing is going to have an in-home visit with Louisville, who's still trying to recruit him. He might go to LSU this weekend. He's got a number of visits left as well. So a very important weekend because all these guys, take out Edwards out of the equation, all fit a need that Wisconsin needs the very next season for that recruiting class to fit some depth issues that the Badgers currently have on the roster.
Right, and one that we didn't really touch on so much right there because we're going to show you a little bit more of him. Kaleb McGarry is a kid who is 6'8", 280 pounds. Now this might be a tough pull for Gary Anderson because he's got to come all the way from the West Coast over here. But he came here, went to the Michigan-Wisconsin basketball game, and kind of learned a little bit more about how good Wisconsin is, especially with offensive lineman recruits.
McGarry refers to himself as a hillbilly. And so it's just kind of the guy that he takes that personality. You can see his nickname is Big Country for a reason. This guy is country strong when you watch him in film here, and he's just one of those aggressive personalities. And he also describes himself as a homebody, which is why his final five include Washington, Boise State, Arizona State, Washington State. Both Oregon schools have been aggressively recruiting him. And so Wisconsin really doesn't fit into that mix. And McGarry tried to visit over the summer while he was out in Milwaukee for an AAU tournament. The NCAA said he couldn't do that, and so it was kind of a question mark whether McGarry was actually going to come and make that visit. He came this past weekend, and he loved it. Loved everything about the campus, loved that the snow was here. He said he preferred the snow to the rain. He really enjoyed getting to know Gary Anderson a little bit more. He's really developed a good relationship with Coach Chad, the defensive line coach, and Coach TJ Woods. This is a perfect fit for Wisconsin. I asked him, I said, I know you describe yourself as a homebody, a guy who wants to play close to home, be with family members out there. Could you see yourself playing at Wisconsin? He said, definitely. It's definitely a possibility because I had no clue how much of an offensive line tradition Wisconsin had. I mean, you just point to the number of players that have gone pro for the Badgers the last couple of years. You have Travis Frederick, Peter Kahns. You have Ryan Groy looking at a chance to play this year. Kevin Zeitler was a first-round pick. I could go on. And McGarry kind of sees that now and sees what the campus is all about, sees the coaching staff. This could be a good fit. Like you mentioned, Phil, it's going to be a hard pull. Washington has him for an official visit this weekend. Then he's going to Arizona State. Washington, by far and away, is the leader. But if he can pull himself away from playing in-state and can see himself being here with that offensive line tradition, I think Wisconsin's got a really good shot. A lot of points they scored for themselves this weekend with Kaleb McGarry.
All right, one last profile we're going to take a look at here before we let you go and get into Badger hockey. Tavaris Williams, a cornerback from Florida. He's got a couple of offers and expecting a couple of more. Very talented athlete who can play both cornerback and running back, and Wisconsin's recruited him as a running back, which is kind of interesting because we found out the last couple weeks, with James White, obviously graduating, and with Joe Mixon deciding to go to Oklahoma, and Vontae Jackson being switched from running back to safety, Wisconsin has some depth issues going forward. So they want to take 3 in this class. They would like to take 3 opposite, Taiwan Deal and Caleb Kinlaw. This guy is very talented. Wisconsin is trying to get him on campus next weekend for the 31st. This could be big for the Badgers. Right before National Signing Day. When we're coming back, Badger hockey. We'll hit it right here on IBN. Welcome back to Inside Badger Nation, and we're joined by a special guest today, Brian Posick, the voice of Badger hockey, and you can also hear him weekdays on the Big Ten 70 after 2 o'clock during On Wisconsin. Brian, welcome. Thank you for coming to Inside Badger Nation.
Good to be here. Always like to talk to you guys.
Well, let's first and foremost start with the Badger men's hockey team, of course, coming off of another bye week and the first week of the Big Ten season, or the first year of the Big Ten, and the Badgers getting involved in that, kind of hitting the meat of their schedule. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's happened up to this point and what we're heading into?
Well, 20 games in so far. Wisconsin's 13-6-1. Got off to a rocky start, blown out twice out in Boston. Came back home and then eventually lost a couple of games at Minnesota as well. 2 very good teams, I might add. Minnesota's ranked number 1 in the country. Boston College is ranked 2nd right now. So, but they kind of got their footing underneath them. It was a choppy schedule with 3 bye weeks during a 5-week span. But I think that they're kind of finding themselves now. Certainly helped coming back and having a 12-game homestand, and so far they're 9-1 on that homestand and playing well. They're scoring about 3.5 goals per game, about 4 during this homestand. Defensively, they've been much better too. Still room for improvement in various different areas. But going into this weekend series against Ohio State and the meat of the Big Ten Conference, Wisconsin's in pretty decent shape. Unfortunately for them, Minnesota's been playing so well. They have a 10-point lead in the Big Ten right now, although Wisconsin has 2 games in hand.
Tell me a little bit about the transition from the WCHA to the Big Ten. When was that decision handed down? I mean, this is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, actually, probably 7 or 8 years ago, I'm standing at Magnus Arena in Denver, and former associate AD for Wisconsin, Cheryl Maris, said Big Ten hockey's coming. Well, it took a little while, and then the things started to be put into motion a little bit. We heard about it a few years ago. It became official a couple of years ago, and now it's all here. The WCHA was a great league and still is a very good league. It produced so many national champions and All-Americans and NHL players. But I think its time had come, at least for the University of Wisconsin and for the University of Minnesota, and obviously the other 4 schools, or 3 of the other 4 schools that are involved. Penn State, it was a fledgling program last year at the varsity level. But I believe that fans are going to become more accustomed and excited about Big Ten hockey. We saw it 2 weeks ago when the Michigan Wolverines were in town. I mean, here's a team that we haven't seen very often. And as Wisconsin completed the sweep on Saturday night in front of 14,000 fans, there was a bit of a scrum that transpired. and fans, that brings them to their edge of their seat. Yeah, they want to see goals and big hits. But all of a sudden, there's a bit of a brawl at the end of the game. And for those longtime fans that are upset that we aren't seeing North Dakota this year, although we will in the future years, they're looking for somebody not to like.
Right.
All right? Michigan is perfect fodder
pretty
for that.
Easy to
and Ohio State might be pretty quickly here too. So I think fans will get more and more used to it, and quite honestly, I enjoy it. I think from from the sport as a whole with the work that the Big Ten Network does, and I think it can do better. But I think with the amount of games that it's providing nationally on television, as well as other national outlets, I think the sport has a chance to grow because of that television exposure.
We're seeing highlights from the Colorado College-Wisconsin series earlier this year, and Brian, it's you mentioned the rocky start that this team had. Was this homestand, and I guess it wasn't against world beaters, except when they played number 8 Michigan. Was those wins early against Colorado College and Alaska Anchorage, Alabama, Huntsville, were those key for this team to kind of get their legs underneath them, learn how it is to kind of start winning these kind of games to kind of give them that momentum that they weren't getting in the first part of the season because of who they were playing and the bye weeks?
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. Not that they went into those series. Penn State was another one. Not that they went into those series thinking, okay, we're going to wipe the ice with these guys. They did lose one along the way to Alaska Anchorage, which is much improved, I might add. But it did give them a chance to, all right, let's get ourselves straightened out here a little bit. They didn't have to travel anywhere, so they're able to practice at home. They're able to stay at home. And it was also, for the most part, during the semester break as well. So they could concentrate a lot on hockey and getting their line combinations and defensive pairs set, work on various systems, improve their power play, their penalty kill, and things of that nature. And so, yes, I think it became a very critical segment of their schedule. They saw 12 games in a row at home. Here's where they can do some damage, and they have done that so far.
Now, we talk about the Big Ten hockey. Wisconsin's played 3 series, but they're all kind of familiar opponents. They played 2 up in Minnesota, where Wisconsin's played twice a year for a number of years. Penn State we saw last year. Michigan was kind of the new kind of wrinkle to the schedule. Now you have Ohio State, and now you start playing a lot of Big Ten hockey. Michigan State's going to come up twice. You're going to go to Penn State for the first time. You're going to go to Yost Arena, where they haven't been in a number of years. Do you think this is kind of when Big Ten hockey is going to start to really kind of bubble up to the surface here, and people are going to really start to get excited about it?
Well, there's no doubt, because football's over, except for the Super Bowl and the Senior Bowl this Saturday, right? And then, obviously National Signing Day and the NFL Draft, but football's over. So now fans realize that, for the Big Ten, at least this year, and maybe somewhere down the line it's going to change, but it's Friday, Saturday for the most part. Although when Minnesota comes to Madison in a few weeks, that's a Thursday, Friday series. But still, you can see the games, double headers on Friday night on the Big Ten Network. I think, again, that promotes the sport. And yes, now we're getting into the meat of it. And what Badger fan likes Michigan or Michigan State or Ohio State? Whatever the sport may be, you want your team to beat that other team. So I do think that that's going to be coming to fruition very soon, if it hasn't already.
All right, when we come back, we're going to ask Brian a couple more questions about this year's Badger hockey team as we get to know them a little bit better, and then we'll dive into our email question of the week. So stick around. This is Inside Badger Nation. Welcome back into Inside Badger Nation, joined by Brian Posick, the voice of Wisconsin Badger hockey, and talked a little bit about the Big Ten and the Badgers getting into that. But what about this team in general? What have you seen from this club so far? I mean, what's the identity that they're trying to build or have shown already?
Yeah, well, I think they're trying to figure it out still. I think they have some pretty good components to it. They were very thrilled. Mike Eaves and his staff very impressed with how their team handled things against Michigan when things weren't going right. But they played very well in sweeping the Wolverines 5-2 and 3-1, came up with big goals when they needed to get them, and defensively they were pretty solid when they had to be too. But what I see is a team that can put the puck away. Mike Eaves has been criticized by his colleagues, among others, for being a defensive-minded head coach. Well, here's a team that's scoring almost 4 goals a game. That's fun to watch. Defensively, they're still getting better in their zone, but they've got a goaltender, and actually 2. Landon Peterson's a good goaltender, but Joel Rumpel has stepped to the forefront, and he's 8-1, 9-1 in his last string of starts here. I mean, he's a guy they can lead on. So it's always about hard work. It's always about playing as a team. Mike Eaves will tell you that time and time again, but we're seeing more and more of that out of this club, and that's where the identity is forming.
And this weekend, they are going to be without Nick Kurdelis, but he's proven to be one of the most dynamic players that has come through in a little while.
Yes, there's no question. I look at Nick Kurdelis like Sam Decker. On the ice. He's a super sophomore with fantastic skills, a ton of energy, a very cool personality. He knows he's good and is not afraid to talk about it. But he also knows when he's not playing well and needs to improve. But his health is so critical, I think, for the success of this hockey team, because we see where they stand now without him, and they're pretty good. But if you throw him into the second line at center, he's a dynamic type of player that can be a game changer, and they want him back sooner than later. Hopefully he gets over his injury here soon. It won't be this weekend against Ohio State. It could be next weekend at Michigan. Maybe it's not until the following week when Minnesota comes to Madison. But as soon as they get him back, we're going to see even probably a little bit more offensive production from this team in Cardinal and White.
Well, speaking of offensive production, Michael Mersch has put together quite the season so far, and especially a good couple of weeks.
Yeah, you know what? He's been a very good, solid player for them throughout his career. He came in as a young man that looked like Bambi on skates. He really struggled, and he would red that too. His improvement skating-wise has been fantastic. He's so strong over the puck. He's a big body. That's why the LA Kings like him so much and drafted him in the 4th round a couple of years ago, but he continues to improve. So last year he pots 23 goals. This year he's the Big Ten leader in goal scoring with 14, and I might add the second leading goal scorer plays for Ohio State, number 18, Ryan Dzingel. We'll see him this weekend. But Mersch has been a model of consistency for them, and they've moved Jefferson Dahl to center on Michael's line with Brad Navin, and those two have really connected. And in fact, during this homestand, Jefferson Dahl has 13 points, 3 goals. He's already eclipsed his point total from a year ago in less than half the games. So we're seeing different guys pick up their production throughout. Michael Mersch is definitely fun to watch, but there are a number of pieces on this team with Tyler Barnes and Mark Zangerly and Morgan Zelenik and Grant Bessie, the freshman who can really snipe the puck. Offensively, this is a team that can put the puck away.
And this team is loaded with seniors too, and it's hard to be the captain of a team with so many seniors, especially be the youngest senior on this team. But Frankie Simonelli's done a great job leading this team.
He really has. You know, he's a relatively quiet soul, but he's really taken on that leadership role. But he also has help from Jefferson Dahl and from Jake McCabe, a second-round draft pick of the Buffalo Sabres, who was the captain of the United States team at the World Junior Championship last year when they won gold. So, but then there are the other guys too, the other seniors that have taken accountability and responsibility for the program. They get along well. They meet as a group of seniors when things aren't going well or when they're going right, and trying to keep everybody on the same path. The chemistry on this team is pretty solid, and when you win, generally that's what happens, and we're seeing that right now.
The last time we saw this many seniors on a Wisconsin hockey team, they went to the finals, lost to Boston College and Detroit 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. Do you think this team has the makings of a team that can get to that level again, and maybe even get to the top of the mountain, like Mike Eaves likes to say?
Yeah, you know, I think it has what it takes. Again, I've talked about the offense. Defensively, I still think they need to shore things up, especially in transition. Coach Eaves was talking about that too. It's like fast break defense.
Right.
You know, if the other team rebounds and you don't hustle back, all of a sudden there's a 3-on-2 against. That's what Wisconsin's trying to prevent. We'll see how well they do against this Ohio State team this weekend and then down the road. But, you know, when you talk about a championship caliber team, you've got to start with goaltending. And Wisconsin's in pretty good shape there with Joel Rumpel and then Landon Peterson if Joel happens to stumble. So I do think the pieces are there. Certainly they have the experience. You look down the middle of the ice, it's much like baseball, center field, the middle infielders and the catcher. You've got to be strong there. Wisconsin's strong down the middle with its center iceman. Minnesota, though, right now, clear-cut number one. They've only lost twice this season. Boston College may have the best player in all of college hockey in Johnny Gaudreau. He's just been dynamite to watch. St. Cloud State's up there. Ferris State's had a solid year. There are a number of teams that could make it to the Final Four, and if Wisconsin's one of them, that'd be fine by me.
All right, in about 10 seconds, what would you say the one thing that this team needs to do to be better from here on out?
Well, I think winning on the road and winning games against good teams on the road. Now, they did that against Miami, a team that was highly thought of to start the season, lost the series opener in Oxford 2-0, but then came back and won the next game with a big third period. Wisconsin's got to show that it can beat quality opponents on the road. So is that going to be Michigan in a couple of weeks? Potentially. Michigan State is not the strongest team out there. Certainly Penn State isn't either. Ohio State, they go to Columbus. We'll see how that works out too.
All right, when we come back, we'll wrap it up with our email question of the week. We invite you to check us out on YouTube. All you got to do is put Inside Badger Nation in the search bar, and you'll find us. Plus, follow us on Twitter @InBadgerNation. Keep you up to date on the latest, what's going on with this show, and we always invite you to email the program, InsideBadgerNation@gmail.com, because if you do, you could be our email of the week which is brought to you by Restaurant 608. 608 Restaurant and Bar, 212 State Street, downtown Madison, where 608 is more than just an area code. And our question comes from Jim in Dane, Wisconsin. It says, what does Wisconsin need to do to sell out weekend hockey games more regularly? What timing on this question, Jim? Because we got Brian Posick here.
Oh, yeah, and I've got all the answers for you. Well, one thing you can do in October and November is not schedule Badger football games at 7 o'clock at home when Wisconsin hockey's playing at 7 o'clock at home. How about that, you know? One thing I'd like to see Wisconsin do, though, is take a look at the schedule and try to figure it out so when Wisconsin football is at home, they're on the road. They're going to need help from the Big Ten to do that, obviously. One thing they're doing this Saturday for the Ohio State series is a whiteout where they're offering $11 tickets to fans. If you go to uwbadgers.com, there's a promo code there. You can go through the entire rigmarole that you need to do that, but you get $11 tickets. You know, quite honestly, when you're paying $24 for a ticket to a Wisconsin hockey game and you want to take your wife and 2 kids, that's $100 right there to get in, then $15 to park, and then if you want to buy a $5 hot dog, you know, I mean, it gets very pricey. And I know that's the same way with football and basketball too, but the marketing department, the University of Wisconsin, trying to find different ways now to bring fans in. If that means cutting ticket prices in half or more, then do it. Pack the place. Because when you pack the place, that's when fans maybe that hadn't been there before go, enjoy it, and then they want to come back and may pay a few extra dollars to come back the next time.
Give them a free set of steak knives maybe when they
steak
walk
knives,
in.
Certainly, yeah.
And I think the other thing too is they just got to win.
Yeah, well,
consistently.
there's no question about that. There's no doubt. And you know, last year they went to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 3 years. That's not Wisconsin hockey. That's not where Mike Eves wants the program either. So yeah, you have to throw a consistently successful program on the ice each and every season. And, you know, granted, we're going to see more fans January and on, but if you can kind of get going a little bit earlier and then set the stage for what's to come, that will bring fans back. But you're right. I mean, this year they're 12-1-1 at home. Last year they were 10-8-3 or something of that nature. When you are playing at home, you have to win at home. Right. And you also have to be in the mix for your conference title and in the national tournament picture.
Yeah, it'd be nice, too, if they bring in some elite opponents, too. I mean, you remember Boston College came in, and they're going to come in again in the future, Boston University, and especially those rivalry games. People get up for North Dakota, Denver, Michigan. They don't really get up for Alabama, Huntsville.
No, they don't, but you also have to, it's just like football and basketball, though. You have to, sure, you've got to play those tough opponents, but then you also have to find the other cupcakes, if you will, to fill out the schedule. That's just the way it is. But Colorado College was in town this season. Next year, Wisconsin goes to play single games against Denver and CC, and then Denver will come in a couple of years. North Dakota, they've signed a contract where for the next 5 years, we'll see the Fighting Sioux, twice in Madison, twice up in Grand Forks. I know they're working on Minnesota Duluth, St. Cloud State. You know, Duluth for sure, having been a longtime WCHA member. So they're trying to get the best schedule possible, and they know fans want to see NODAC. They know that they want to see UMD. I mean, and that's what they're working on. But yeah, we'll be seeing some pretty good opponents, and hopefully we see Miami again and on down the line.
Should probably mention too that not just in the arena, but you can also watch the Badgers Big Ten hockey on the Big Ten Network. And if you haven't checked out LeBon Arena yet, go check out Mark Johnson's hockey team there too, because that's a very cool arena to see. Really good hockey happening there too.
Yeah, so. Duluth is in town this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Wisconsin women ranked 2nd in the country, and Alex Rigsby, All-American goaltender, the all-time winningest goalie in Wisconsin history this past weekend.
That's Brian Posick. That's Ben Wargall. I'm Phil Dawson. We'll see you next time on Inside Badger Nation.